Hiya, I'm Eve. I work at Arts for Health. Welcome to another art therapy video. We are outside, as you can see, and today we're working with clay. So our process today is all about clay vessels and clay seeds. We are going to be exploring vessels as containers for different elements in our lives, things that we might want to have contained, and we're going to be exploring seeds as different areas of change and growth in our life. So today we're going to write a little bit about our ideas of the metaphors and what comes to mind when we think of vessels and seeds. Then we're going to make some vessels and seeds with some clay, and then we're going to write about it again and add a title right at the end. So the idea today is that we're exploring what it's like to be able to contain areas of our lives that we would like to contain, and what it's like to make seeds for parts of our lives that we would like to grow and see change in. Okay, so the materials that we need today, we only need clay. So this is my clay. Because I'm outside, I also have some board here that I'm going to be working on with my clay. And then we need a paper and pen to do our reflection on. So those are the only materials you need, as well as your hands, to be able to work with the clay. If you would like to use some pottery tools to work with your clay, that's a great idea too. Okay, so what are our steps today? Our first step is to do some free writing with just one theme about seeds and vessels and whatever that brings to mind for us. So just the two words seeds and vessels, or three words I guess it is, seeds and vessels, and you're just going to start writing for 3 minutes, free writing about those. So the idea here is that we have a little starter, a theme of seeds and vessels, but apart from that we just write whatever comes into our head and through our fingers out onto the page. And one thing that some people worry about is that they won't know what to write, and at that point you might be able to write, I don't know what to write, or blah blah blah, or the cat sat on the mat. So it's just a way of bringing all our thoughts out into our pen, out of our brain and onto the page. So 3 minutes of free writing with the starter, seeds and vessels. So that's a way for us to bring out any ideas that we have about those as literal things or as metaphors for something in our lives as well. The second step is to get some clay and to make some vessels. So we're going to be making vessels in any way that makes sense for you. You might be thinking about pots, you might be thinking about bowls, plates, boxes, anything that feels like a container or a vessel. You can make that and explore how it feels to make that with clay. The next step is to make some seeds. So similar thing, there's no special perfect seed that you have to make. Any sort of thing that comes to mind when you think of a seed, we're making those out of clay. So as we've been using the clay to make the seeds and the vessels, we've probably got a bit more focus on our body and our senses. Then towards the end we're going to spend a little bit of time, just as we're finishing up with our hands, finishing up with the clay, we're going to spend a little bit of time thinking about what do these mean to me, what have I learned, what does the metaphor of a seed or the metaphor of a vessel remind me of and make me think about for myself in my own life. So just getting a little bit more space in our head to think about what those seeds and vessels have brought up for us. Then the final step is to take some time to do 3 more minutes of writing. Now this isn't free writing, this is a little bit more reflective, so give yourself some things to write about, like what did I learn today, what insights have I got from the clay, what have I learned from the shapes and items that I've made, what was I focused on today, and we're going to put a title on our artwork as well. So those are our steps today. Let's get into it. Okay, so I have finished my clay vessels and seeds. So here they are. So I've got 7 vessels that I ended up making, a kind of a bit of a variety of different shapes and sizes. So I started off with some taller ones, and I noticed when I started that I was quite focused on structural integrity and almost actually on speed and sort of like engineering a whole lot of vessels. Like I had an idea that I needed to make lots and get them done, and I was sort of focused on an end goal, like a product that I wanted to produce. And then I noticed as I started to get more attention on my body, I was able to slow down a little bit and focus more on the different shapes and not so much on the structural integrity of the actual clay vessels. So it was interesting how my first attention was on making them very good vessels, which is not right, not wrong. It's okay what we focus on, it's just what happens. But then it was interesting that I started to be able to focus more on myself and my reaction and my relationship with the vessels that I was making and how they made me feel and how they connected with me more emotionally and spiritually. Another thing that I noticed when I was making my clay vessels and seeds was that the clay allowed so much moldability. It was so malleable and movable that it allowed a lot of change. So I could make lots of different choices as I went and go, oh no, I don't want it to look like that, I'd like to look like this, and change what I'd just done. So there was a lot of openness and flexibility to change in my vessels. That was very interesting because it made me think about how the things that we might use to contain the challenges in our lives or to make us feel contained and safe, things like safe places like a home or a little place under a tree like this, those safe places, they can be very changeable and flexible, and they don't have to always be exactly the same. They can be molded into different shapes as we need. And that was a new thing for me to learn, that these things aren't set in stone. They can be unique to us and what we need at that time, and that's okay. Another thing that I noticed as I was making the vessels was that I had a little bit of attention initially on what does this vessel contain, what specific part of my life does it connect to, what does it represent. And as I went on, I lost a little bit of that need to have specific things linked to each vessel, and I was more able to explore just the feeling of being contained. So that actual experience that I got of making containers and feeling safe and feeling like even I could sneak into my little vessel, that was a good experience for me. That took me a little bit out of my head and my thinking brain where I was thinking, what does this connect to specifically for me? And it was more just about an experience for myself in the present. I was able to link the vessels to some parts of my own life, to things about my family and my own background and what's happening for me. So that was useful, but I did notice that using the clay allowed me to still remain focused on my present experience, on my hands, on the textures that I was working with. So it kept me in a very safe space, and I didn't get too much stuck in my thoughts about different challenges in my own life. As I made the seeds, as always, I didn't have a pre-planned idea of what my seeds would look like, but it was very interesting because they ended up looking like little korus that are rolled together, and that allowed me to explore this idea that a seed is like a curled up little piece of potential. And I really enjoyed seeing like the little sort of head of this little worm, this little seed, that it was curled up like it was just sleeping, or like it was just preparing itself and building up its energy before it started to grow more and more. And that allowed me to explore what it's like for a seed to be dormant and to be in sort of a sleeping, waiting phase, and to just be able to stay in a little safe space in here where it's maybe quiet and tender and dark and soft, and that's actually okay. And that seeds don't have to grow in a rush. They can sleep and snooze for a while. So that was something new that came as insight to me. I found that for myself, the writing at the beginning was a good way to give me a bit of a launch, to get me going, to start me thinking about what I was doing and bring me into the present with this theme of seeds and vessels. Then I really enjoyed getting into my body and my senses and my own personal world symbolism and thoughts and emotions as I was working the clay, and then just a little bit of writing at the end brought a little bit of clarity again to what had happened and what I had made, and it was quite a useful structure for me to have writing either side of the clay making in the middle. So I noticed that I was able to go through a little bit of a process and come out with some clarity. So that was my process today with seeds and vessels. I hope you give it a go. I hope you explore the different metaphors and ideas that come up with containers and seeds of change, and that you can spend time with clay in the present as well as doing a little bit of writing. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.